Let's bring in the president of the National Right to Work Committee. His name is Mark Mix. Hey, Mark. It's good to have you on the show.
Hey, Kerry, thanks for the opportunity to talk with you on this get out of the weekday Friday.
Oh, my goodness. This was one of those slow crawling weeks. Now, Joe Biden, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's running for president. And he's mentioned that, by golly, if he becomes president of the United States, he's going to put together a federal law that will push aside the right to work opportunities in 27 states. One of those is here in Kentucky, of course. And I'm sure you don't think that's a very good idea.
Well, absolutely not. And, it's interesting. We passed 5 new right-to-work laws in the last 8 years, Kentucky being one of them. And I think the folks in Kentucky that heard all the rhetoric about right-to-work are probably surprised that it's a relatively simple concept that has not harmed anyone's right to join a union or impeded anyone's right to join a union. It's simply given workers a choice. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have indicated very, very publicly, many times, that they are going to repeal the federal law that allows states to pass right-to-work laws. And, Terry, it's important historically to understand that the federal government is the one that imposed forced unionism on the states. And that language is still on the books in Washington, D.C., but they can repeal this little section that allows states like Kentucky to pass right-to-work laws, and both of them have committed aggressively to do that.
What is the card check forced unionism bill? What does that mean?
Well, Terry, that's an interesting concept, too. We allegedly, and I don't know if it's going to hold true in this election, we get to go behind a curtain and cast our vote for those people that we would like to represent us, both whether it be, in Washington, D.C. or whatever state capital or Frankfurt, wherever you are. But for union certification, that kind of secret ballot concept holds true, that you get to go behind a curtain and no one knows how you vote for a union. And that's the way it's been since the beginning of the union certification process back in the 1930s. What Biden and Harris would like to do, and what union officials would like to do, is to wipe out that secret ballot election and allow them to be, quote-unquote, certified by simply getting a majority of people in a workplace to sign a card by whatever means they find necessary to get that card signed. And I say that somewhat sarcastically because we've represented employees that have had people show up on their front porches at 11 o'clock at night saying, hey, by the way, why don't you sign this card? And sometimes they come with 1, 2, or 3 people that are encouraging you, and I'm using my finger quotes here, to sign this card. And once the union gets 50% plus one of the cards, then the union is automatically certified for everyone in the bargaining unit. So taking away the secret ballot and replacing it with a coercive card check system is what they're up to.
I see. And obviously there's implied intimidation with 3 people can show up at your house and say, sign here, because you feel like you go to work the next day and you're not going to be treated the same since they know how you feel about the union, whether or not you want to be in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as I mentioned, we have a legal defense foundation that represents employees in America's workplaces all across the country. And one segment of the type of cases that we litigate to protect employees are exactly these types of card check intimidation programs that have been occurring for, about the last 10 years. This has been something they've been after. They tried to pass it when President Obama had 60 votes in the Senate and had a majority in the House. And interestingly enough, once some of the politicians found out that they had the votes to pass it, they turned a little bit. We were able to stop it back in 2009 and 2010. But like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, they are back. They're back again.
And obviously, we know that unions can spend a lot of the money that comes out of workers' paychecks on their favorite political people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person who's working in a union shop feels that way politically, but their money is taken and used for those purposes. And again, that feels like that's some personal control that's taken away.
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. And that's one of the most compelling arguments about forced unionism in America, is that money that a worker is forced to pay to the union is used for political purposes. And, union officials will say, we don't do politics, we have this separate political action committee. Well, they do have political action committees, and they are generally voluntary, but unions spend a lot of general treasury money on voter registration drives, get out the vote drives, printing posters and yard signs and all those types of things that are done with general treasury money. That is money that's collected from workers in 23 states that don't have a choice. And this idea that the law allows them to use your money to support candidates and causes you oppose is really something that's kind of head-shaking, if you will.
Lots of union employees will say, wait a minute, the union gives me this support system here, there, insurance-wise, support if there's a grievance filed against me, against my employer. I'm but one lone employee, and because I'm part of the union, I feel like I have a team behind me that can preserve my job. So how do you answer when people say right to work means you're a mercenary, that you're out there on your own, and that you don't have any support?
Yeah, and that's a legitimate question, and it's one that most people, when you think about it just off the top without a really kind of working knowledge of labor policy, sounds pretty fair. Well, the fact of the matter is that if the union is doing that for you, and they're providing great service, and they're representing you in the workplace, and they're doing these things that are workplace-focused, then nothing in the right to work laws in the 27 states, including Kentucky, stop you from joining or participating in the union if you choose to do so. But the other side of that argument is this. We talked about the card check union certification process. Once they get 50% plus one of all those cards, then everybody in the bargaining unit comes under union control, meaning they can no longer speak for themselves. They can no longer go to the boss and say, hey, boss, I make 8 widgets an hour and the other guy makes 4 widgets an hour. Can I be paid more? They can't say that because if the employer talks to them, it's an unfair labor practice charge under the federal labor policy that we have since 1935. So the unions get this monopoly voice over every single worker. And, you know, the next argument is, well, everyone benefits from the union contract. Well, that's not necessarily true either, Terry, because you have lots of situations where the person that's been there one more day than you, even though they're a less quality worker or whatever, would stick around if there was a layoff because they had this union contract. That's not a benefit to an aggressive, productive worker when it comes to, you know, you have to be around for one more year to get a pay raise, whether you're good or bad or medium at your job. That type of monopoly voice gives the union officials dramatic power in a workplace, and it's one of the reasons why the Supreme Court in June of 2018 freed every government employee in the country from being forced to pay dues or fees to keep their job. They said that everything the unions do is political, they're lobbying, they're working for causes, and that no one should be forced to pay a fee to a private organization for the privilege of working.
Mark, really appreciate your insights. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. And happy weekend. Happy Friday. Good weekend to you.
Back at you, brother. Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Committee.